Right, and you get, in a lot of hard work, and then you get a few breaks, and then a lot of hard, it's like, 3 steps forward and 2 back, and, just before we went on national television, I thought we had the whole world by the tail. We were going to go up via satellite to over 1,000 stations, and then a guy that used to work for me, one of these guys that loves to find problems, he just runs around and throws up on everybody. And he came into my office. He said, "Jim, our company's not going to make it. We're going to go broke and go out of business." I said, "What are you talking about? We're getting ready to launch on national television. We just won an Emmy Award. We've got all this stuff going on." He said, "Jim, you've committed to over 1,000 TV stations that you're going to deliver 2-hour blocks of programming at various times of the day and night via satellite. And our movies that you got are too short." And I said, "What do you mean they're too short? We own some great movies." And he said, "Well, they average right at an hour and a half, and you were going to have a half hour of dead air on national television." He said, "What are you going to do about it?" And I wasn't going to tell him. I said, "Well, I'm going to host a talk show, and I'm going to interview these movie stars that are in these movies." And I had to release him shortly after that to go find an opportunity somewhere else. I told him I have enough problems with my competition. I don't need to pay people to bring me problems. I get enough of them anyway. And Kathy and we were about 8 weeks from going on national TV, and we had a lot of classic movies. That was our audience. And so she and I head off blind leading the blind with her giant magnifying glass she could read with. And we found a book in the Tulsa Public Library called Addresses of the Stars. And she read me some of these names, like Katharine Hepburn, Jimmy Stewart, Frank Sinatra, Michael Douglas. I said, "Yeah, I'll let them be on my show." And I wrote these people, the biggest names in the golden age of Hollywood, a 1-page letter. And I told them what a great career opportunity I was going to give them for no money to come on my non-existent talk show on my mythical network. And could you please hurry up and let me know? Because we're now about 7 weeks from air. And we had a moment of silence, and we sent out this giant pile of letters. And I always tell people, when your ship's sinking, I'll take a leaky lifeboat. I mean, it's better than nothing. Let's try it. Well, it was about 10 days later, the first response came back in the mail. And Kathy was excited. She had the giant magnifying glass she was reading, and she said, "It says Katharine Hepburn, New York City." Well, wow. I mean, she had just had her On Golden Pond, won an Academy Award. She had turned down Letterman and Leno at the time. And I thought, wow, what is this? And Kathy opened it, and it said, "Please call this number. We can explore possibly doing your interview." So I called the number. I'm ready to talk to her agent or her secretary or her manager or whoever answers the phone. And she answers the phone herself with that Katharine Hepburn voice she had. And I'm trying not to pass out on the floor. I'm this guy from Tulsa and doesn't know what he's doing. And I said, "Miss Hepburn, I'm really surprised you answer your phone." And she said, "Jim, don't you answer your phone?" She said, "I've always felt when one's phone rings, one should answer it." And I said, "Of course they should." And I wish I hadn't brought that up, but she was my first big interview. I'd never done local or regional TV. I mean, a couple weeks later, I'm sitting there next to Katharine Hepburn.
Yeah.
And that opened up so many doors because, we could tell people, "We'd like you to be on our show. Katharine Hepburn was last week, you'll be next week." So after that, I got Jimmy Stewart, and then Frank Sinatra did a thing for me. And that was monumental. And but it was all due to Katharine Hepburn. And late in her life, we talked several more times. And I said, "Miss Hepburn, you have no idea how I used you to build my television network." And she said, "Jim, men have used me all my life. At least you're honest about it." And I said, "Well, I certainly did." And it was an amazing time. And you just, when the dream's big enough, the facts don't count. And I just figured there's some way we're going to get there.
Where did you have that idea to have the talk show in between that dead air? Where did that come from? And had you ever done any interview experience before then?
No, I had no experience doing a talk show. I had no experience doing anything. I mean, I had shoveled concrete. I didn't know what I was doing. And the next thing I know, I'm building a television network. And what I didn't know about television would amaze you. We'd won an Emmy Award for our first season on national television. Kathy and I fly blind leading the blind to New York City, and I did a thing with Larry King. He had recorded a thing where all the people getting Emmy Awards, and he thought it was kind of cool. A blind guy's getting an Emmy Award for TV. And he was going to air it that night just before the awards. Well, I'm upstairs in my hotel room trying to get my tuxedo on and trying to get the TV on CNN, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I called down to the front desk, and I said, I'm up here, and I'm going to be on Larry King in about 3 minutes, and I don't know how to get your TV to work. Well, the guy was quick. I'll give him that. The bellman rushes in and runs over to the TV and pushes the power button, and the TV comes on. And he says in that New York bellman tone that they can get, he said, sir, if you want to watch the TV, you kind of need to push the power button on. But he was a good New York bellman going for the big tip, so he didn't want to embarrass me too bad. He said, so what are you doing here in New York this week? I said, well, I'm here to get an Emmy Award for engineering expertise that's expanded the scope of television, which he thought was kind of amazing for a guy that didn't know how to turn one on. And that was kind of, it's been that way, and it just continued to be that way. And, just the movie stars came out and the Emmy Awards and everything opened up, and then digital stuff happened, and the world changed for us.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, once you get Katharine Hepburn and you use, that, hey, she was on last week, and you keep going and snowballing, and Larry King, for people who don't know, Larry King was the best interviewer in the world, in my opinion.
No question.
Did it for as long as he did it until he died. I mean, he did it for a very extremely long time, and I still pull his questions. I watch him, on YouTube, and I pull some of the questions that he asks his guests, and I use them on my guests because they're timeless, and he's just one of the greatest, great story. But, you mentioned Frank Sinatra, like having sitting across the table from Frank Sinatra and movie stars and people like that. What was the stuff that they must have been in awe of you and what you were doing?
Well, I don't know if Mr. Sinatra was in awe of me. I was certainly in awe of him. I went down to Dallas, and he was doing a concert with the symphony, and they had reserved the top 2 floors of the Hyatt Regency. And I mean, they'd cordoned off the street, and there's helicopters flying around and everything. And, my crew's all ready, and here comes Frank Sinatra with about 5 or 6 guys that were always around him. And, I said, Mr. Sinatra, you've created quite a commotion here in Dallas. And he said, what are you talking about? And he turns to one of his guys and says, what's he talking about? And he says, well, I know what he's talking about, but boss, you don't get it. And then I realized he's never been anywhere where Frank Sinatra isn't there. He thinks this is normal, but he was great. And, from doing interviews like we're doing now, if you can ever get past people's pad answers, the canned answers they have, Frank Sinatra was asked every question under the book, and most of them he just started the tape and would play his normal answer to that question. But some of them, you realize you get a little past that. And, I said, Mr. Sinatra, 50 years from now, what do you want people back in Hoboken, New Jersey to say about Frank Sinatra? And he said, they know me, and they know all the bad and ugly things about me. And he said, Jim, I'd like them to say, that Sinatra kid was a decent saloon singer that put on a good show. And that's enough. But I'll never forget my last minute with Sinatra. I shook his hand, and he walked with us about halfway down the corridor to the elevator, and there's nobody on the floor but him. And we're about halfway to the elevator, and he said, take care. And I get all the way to the elevator, and he says, hey, kid. And I turned around, and I'm a kid. I was 35 years old then. He said, hey, kid. And I said, yes, sir. He said, I hope you live to be 100 years old, and the last thing you ever hear is me singing you a song. And I said, may it be so.